Because I can't make it. It's such a Sunday afternoon game in Portland that I and the weekend go down. My wife and I we bought tickets for us and the kids. We got 14. So I'll let you know when the date is.
Everybody hear me out back? No? I'll play around. Everybody good back there for real? All right, we're going to get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for what is the last Bangor Daily Brews of the year. Don't worry, there'll be more next year.
We'll be there.
And so this is a new event series we've been doing this year at the Bangor Daily News. First of all, I'm Matt Younger. I'm the assistant editorial page editor at the Bangor Daily News. And I feel glad to have you about for anything, so that's a good start. Susan Young, my editor, is here. She's going to be leading the conversation this evening. Kimberly Scholes is our event coordinator back there, and a big thanks to Sea Dog for hosting us tonight. But one of the issues we've been looking at this year, which a lot of people are, is workforce development and this idea of growing Maine's workforce. So we figured we'd have a conversation with some of the folks on the front lines of that. And it's actually, this conversation tonight was actually Aubrae's idea to convene a couple months ago. She reached out to us, so thanks to her for that idea. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel here, Susan, and then we're going to have about a 20-minute conversation, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys. The point of these events is to have questions and have a dialogue. So we're going to set the stage a little bit and then get out of your way. But first over here we have Nate Wilds, who's the Executive Director of Live and Work in Maine. Aubrae Filipiak, who is the first try too. Impressive, right? She's the Bangor Region Director for Maine Career Connect, which is a nonprofit initiative from the Maine State Chamber. And then last but certainly not least, we have Andy Geaghan.
Maybe least.
And Andy is a third generation, I believe, brewer and owner of Geaghan's Pub and Brewery. So again, thank you to the three of them for joining. Thank you all for being here. And I'm going to turn it over to Susan and get this conversation rolling.
Thanks, Matt. And I know a lot of you have been to these before, so forgive me if the spiel is repetitive. But this year, the editorial page decided to focus on 4 issues. It's not the only thing we're looking at, but 4 issues that we keep coming back to. Obviously, workforce challenges are one of them. Another one is kind of what we call the high cost of rural living. How do you provide government services in a big geographic area with a sparse population? We also looked at referendum reform as the legislature debated changes to the state's referendum system. And then we asked our readers for their topic. And by far, people chose climate change. So we've had a couple discussions on climate change. We've written a lot of editorials about the topic. And so what we're trying to do with these is have good conversations, really delve into issues. We call them big conversations in small places. So we're trying to have a limited number of folks so we can really let you interact with some of the experts, and together we can begin to delve into these issues, figure out the best way forward. What should local policies be? What should state policies be? And we'll continue to write about them for the rest of this year, and then going into next year we'll see if we keep the same 4 or if we add other issues, drop some. So stay tuned. So tonight we're talking about workforce, which folks who have been here before know we've talked about that a lot. So tonight we're really interested in talking about collaboration. There are so many different groups that are working on the workforce issue, which is getting more people to Maine, making sure workers have the right skills. So let's just open it up with the question about collaboration. How do you guys work together and ensure that that's an additive effort and that we're not just duplicating what so many other groups are doing?
Reinvention of the wheel. I'll start just to give our perspective on 30,000 foot. So we're about 3 years old, and this was the very first question we asked ourselves before we started doing something was, first of all, what is it that needs to get done? Why isn't it getting done by the current organizations that are out there? And are we definitely sure that a new brand and organization is needed? And so the short answer that we found was yes, not to fill a hole, so to speak, but to provide another layer of support. So our role in the greater workforce world is to market, brand, and promote the state as a career destination. So our job is to help the tide go up for everybody, so to speak. And we are very conscious, not just for our, not just because we think it's the right thing to do, but also because a lot of the people we work with are our friends and our neighbors, and we don't want to waste any taxpayer dollars. We don't want to waste anybody's time. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are very smart people in the state, very competent organizations that are doing a lot of good work. The question is not how to avoid stepping on toes. The question is, what are the partnerships that need to be formed in order to get the objective done? And so I think I'll stop talking here in a moment, because I think the next two will have perfect examples. Yeah, it's not really true, but they'll have great examples of how this is done. I'm very optimistic and bullish because I appreciate the question. It's a good question that we ask ourselves all the time. And I think the evidence is in the positive answer, meaning I don't think that is an issue. I don't think we're on a path to stepping on toes or to reinventing wheels. And we have a track record over the last couple of years of forming good partnerships. So I think the opportunity here is to continue focusing on what we need to get done and asking the question, who needs to go do that, rather than how do we appease everybody or how do we make sure all the voices are heard. It's really about solving the problem.
Yeah, I mean, Live and Work is a great bridge organization. They bring people together across the state, whether it's potential Mainers, whether it's exit Mainers, businesses, organizations, municipalities. They do that work of bringing people together. With Maine Career Connect, we really kind of fill this middle ground of we aren't involved really in the attraction piece per se on kind of a large scale level, but we work individually with those people who are attracted to Maine for some reason to make sure they want to stay. And so we feel that, and through that we do a ton of collaboration both with organizations that are attracting folks, with local businesses who are hiring from out of state and relocating people here, as well as everyone in our local communities, to make sure that these newcomers feel welcome, feel accepted, know where to go for what they need, and make sure that the businesses and organizations in Bangor specifically are aware of the 50 to 100 people that we're bringing into the Bangor region on an annual basis through the university, through the healthcare system, and reach out to them, connect with them to make sure that they want to stay here. This is their home now.
Yeah, so all that's fantastic stuff. I come from a different perspective as a single entity. Nate has a lot of crossover with me on the perspective of running a brewery in the state of Maine. But I come up as third generation in a local restaurant and pub, and also in now a brewery. And one of the things that I like to look at is I'm a kid born and raised in this area. I grew up in Orrington. I went to Brewer High School. I went to UMaine. I went to Bangor Theological Seminary. I taught at Brewer High. I am deeply invested in this area. My family has had business interests here since 1975. And one of the things that I look at is how are we marketing ourselves that isn't self-deprecating, that is positive, that is forward-focused, that is an understanding of we are proud of who we are and what we're about, and it's fine to say that. It's fine to say that I'm proud to be from Bangor, even though I'm not from Bangor. I'm decidedly not from Bangor. I've got a brewer witch tattooed on my calf. I'm very much not from Bangor, all right? But yeah, it's
right there.
And one of the things I always look at with this is my wife. She has family ties to Presque Isle. We play that up a little bit with our branding and our marketing. That's very, very true. We love our county roots, and she spent a ton of time up there. She went to Oliver Elementary School. She moved to Brewer and lived in Brewer since she was 2 years old, actually probably a year and a half old. But she was born in Pennsylvania. She was born in Gettysburg because her dad is a college professor, and his first gig was at Gettysburg College. And for a long time, she was told that she wasn't born here, she's from away. And so a lot of my efforts lately have been, let's get rid of that stuff. Let's get rid of that stuff. And I think more importantly, let's celebrate people who choose to be here, who are first generation, who have no roots here. That's one of the things that I can say is like, if you hear nothing else from me in this whole conversation is, let's celebrate people who are the best and brightest who decide to stay, Nate Wilds and Andy Geaghan, but let's celebrate even harder people who have no tie to growing up here, have no tie to our university, but are educated and or hardworking, skilled people who say, I want to be in Maine. Because there's nothing wrong with Maine. In fact, there's a lot right with Maine. There's a lot to celebrate about it. And we are so often talking about reasons why you shouldn't leave, instead of talking about, here's why you should come. Here's why the floodgates should be open and everyone wants to be here. And that's the thing. If you hear nothing else from me in all of it, I might check out, I might not say anything after this. Hear that my big goal is to have people be excited to come to Maine, even if they have zero roots here, zero ties here, didn't go to school here, but they look at Maine and say, you know what? That is the place for me.
If you are currently living and working in Maine, you are a Mainer.
Period. Hard stop. 100%.
I'm out.
I just have to say,
Mic
I
drop.
really appreciate
All right,
that.
well, see you guys.
As someone who is too often told they're from away,
No,
I very
no.
much appreciate
Yeah.
hearing that people who choose to come here to raise their families here, pay a lot of taxes here, are in fact valued and appreciated. But I have like 10,000 follow-up questions.
Can I
Good.
put you on the
All
spot? Can you tell us briefly where you came from and what brought you here?
I'm from Colorado. Like booming
What brought
economy,
you?
so why I'm in Maine.
Yeah.
Well, I did come to college in Maine.
Okay.
But then I left, went other places, but I was looking for a good place to live, a place where I could afford housing.
So you boomeranged back to Maine?
Sort of.
Sure. You were here? You
Yeah,
left?
yeah. But, again, not a native.
Yeah.
And then married a Mainer, someone from Aroostook
There's
County.
that.
So, but we did.
Those county folks.
We
they'll
did
get
think
you.
of moving, but
Very rooted.
yeah. But he was willing to move, but very expensive to live in Colorado. Booming economy, real estate prices are ridiculous.
Yeah.
So a hard place to live because you either live really far from the city, have a nice house, or you live in the city in a little tiny house. We decided to stay here because we wanted to raise kids in a place where it was safe, where it's really easy to get to work. Even if you drive 10 miles, it takes you 10 minutes. So quality of life is what went out for us.
Depending on how you do.
Yeah, but so I want to talk about the positives of Maine. In your experience, when you're selling the state, what are the positives that resonate with people who have either left and want to come back, or people who don't know a lot about Maine? What are the positive messages that sell?
I mean, a lot of it is exactly what you just said, right? It's that safe communities, that the sense of community that we have here, the pride in place goes a long way. When you come here and embrace Bangor, I can speak to Bangor because that's my experience, but when you come and you embrace being a part of the community of Bangor, Bangor embraces you right back. It's easy to get engaged and to become a part of something here. And then I've lived all over the country. I'm not from here. I grew up in the Detroit area, and we just came here because we loved Maine, and my husband had a chance to find a job somewhere else, and I said, why don't we go to Maine? It's great. And within 6 months, I felt like I've been here my whole life, because when you're here and you embrace it with open arms and say, I love this place and I want to get involved, it really does draw you in. Incredibly safe. I sometimes joke with my clients that it's like moving to the 1960s, because I never locked my front door, I never locked my car, and my 3-year-old can walk down the street to his friend's house that's 2 doors down without adult supervision, because I know all the adults on the block are looking out for him. And that's something that for me was really important. It's a really special place to be. And then there's just also that sort of Maine spirit, right? The New England ethos of being very fiercely independent and very proud people, but also being the first to offer your neighbor a helping hand, the first to, you need anything, your neighbor is right there for you. That's a really special thing. And so I spend a lot of time, people can look up the demographics, they can look up the local attractions and things like that. But when I'm talking to clients who are thinking about moving here, I try to dig down a little deeper and tell them about those cultural pieces and those sort of personality pieces that make the Bangor-Orono area incredibly special and incredibly wonderful to live in. So for me, it's that.
Is anybody from New Jersey here?
Oh, wow.
Shoot. All right. Would you forgive me if I reference something
Go for
at
it.
Jersey's expense?
No, please, you'd be first after me.
You're okay. You're both Mainers now,
I'm
so
in
it's
Maine.
okay. Perfect. I just count my blessings that I'm not working for an organization called Live and Work in New Jersey because they have some fundamental problems with a lot, right? In terms of their identity is not one that everybody gets excited about, right? Maine's identity is something that everyone gets excited about because either they have Maine's identity formed in their own way in their own head, or they don't have an identity for Maine at all. We know anecdotally, and we've backed it up with research, the single biggest problem we have in our workforce challenge right now is awareness. So we ran this research study. We co-ran this with the state funded it a couple years ago. It was a workforce attraction research project. It was like the nerdiest thing you've ever heard.
No, but it would scare it would scare you and excite you.
Yes.
If you really look at it.
So the research study went out nationwide and said, we're going to ask a bunch of people, if you're interested in moving somewhere, what are the factors that might influence where you go? And what are the factors about Maine that get you excited or scared? And in the process of doing the research study, some of the open comment fields that we left, almost everybody who filled out the study made a positive comment about Maine because they had learned something about Maine in the process of the research study. Meaning, this was not intentional. This is truly, we're going to find some facts and we know what to work on, right? And so the study found the fact that a lot of people just didn't know the reality that was here, or they didn't know anything at all, right? So they had a false narrative in their head, or they had no narrative in their head. And simply by telling them some factual things they needed in order to respond to the people issuing the survey, they got excited by what we have to offer. Now, not everybody wanted to move here. That's fine. But they appreciated what we had, right? And they said, yeah, it's not for me, but I can see why people like it, right? That's all we can ask for. And so I feel blessed in that Maine, we are not trying to reinvent anything about Maine. And we are not like slamming on the brakes until we fix that one issue, fill in the blank issue. There is no one issue that's stopping us. Of course, we always need to work on improving various different things, and we will continue to do that. But the problem we have is we haven't told the story of who we are. And Bangor, I think, has done a phenomenal job in recent years of telling its story and being louder and prouder about who it is as a community. Portland has done the same. You look at these little pockets. The state as a whole, the reason we exist is the state was not doing this at the same magnitude that we're doing tourism, right? We print vacation land on every single license plate that gets issued. We actively tell the world it's a great place to come for a short period of time. It's like not that big a stretch to say it's also a great place to live and work here full time. It's not like we all go out we don't all get a memo that says, "Warning, a tourist is coming this weekend. Act happy." You know, it's like no, we're blessed to be here year round, and we love it. Otherwise, we would move.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, entirely. And I would echo what both of them have said. And for me, the idea is really, my wife and I met. Everything Maine is personal to me. It's very, very personal to me. My wife and I met as teaching assistants for Brewer High School's outdoor education program. And we met hiking Gulf Haggis every year, 3 times a year. Anybody know where Gulf Haggis is? Okay, those of you who know, good. Those of you who don't, I'm not going to tell you.
It's out on the ocean, right?
It's in New Hampshire.
Nova Scotia.
It's in New Hampshire and/or New Brunswick. I will tell you where, as long as you come hike it with me the first time, because I want to see your enjoyment of it. My wife and I have hiked Gulf Haggis over 30 times each. My wife is the rock star who has hiked Gulf Haggis with both of our children still in utero, which is way harder than me putting him in a backpack and carrying him for the following 3 years. Dealing with that. Yeah, she's still way more impressive than me carrying a 3-year-old in many, many ways. But for me, Maine is so much about things that we have to offer that nobody else does. And the big picture that I want to offer is we do a very bad job selling ourselves as ourselves. And we often try to compare ourselves to something else. And each one of us is here because something caught us. Something about Maine, something about the lifestyle, something about the workforce, something about job opportunities, something caught us. Maine is a very comparatively aware community, very woke, as the kids would say, but also offers a lot of opportunity for things that cannot be recreated elsewhere. And I think one of the biggest things, and this was a piece of what we were conversing about before we started this conversation, one of the things that I think we need to do is just open up our doors a little bit more and be open to not just, we have been so focused on keeping the best and brightest, this brain drain stuff. Can we stop talking about that, please? Please, can we stop talking about that? Because what that implies is we are so afraid that our best and brightest are going to leave and nobody will replace, because why would you? I was going to drop an F-bomb and I apologize. I'm putting on my pastor hat now. I'm going to talk as if I'm Pastor Andy. Can we really please, sure, G. Willikers, try to make sure that we don't talk about why you leave Maine as reasons to stay in Maine, and in fact look around us and say there are a lot of reasons to be here. Each and every one of us is here for a reason. I would look across this room, and I don't know some of you, but I know many of you, and I know many of you, every one of you that I know you have opportunities elsewhere, but you're here for a reason. So let's just start talking about here's why we're here. And if you want to be here for the same reasons, God bless you. That's fantastic.
Well, and I want to build on that just a tiny bit too, because there is a little bit of a false premise in the question, right? Because you started out the question with, what do you do to sell Maine? And this is something that
we don't have to sell Maine.
We don't have to sell Maine. Maine sells itself, but also in my work when I'm working with someone who's thinking about coming here or interviewing for a position here, I make a concerted effort not to sell Maine, because we want people here who want to be here. Yeah. There is a person, there's a lifestyle, there's a culture here, and it's not for everyone. And so we try to, it's a little hard because I'm extremely positive. I love it here. I'm never leaving. So of course I come to it with a little bit of a, sort of an angle there. But I also try to be very candid and very, very real with people. This is what it's like. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. We want the people to come here who want to be here and who want to stay here and want to invest in the community and grow. Not the people who are going to come, try it out for a year, and be like, yeah, I'm going back to Boston. Like, Boston could just have them. It's fine.
So you only have 9,999 more questions to go.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're going to
Sorry.
You've got a group that's going to talk, so.
Well, I can just leave. Okay, that's fine.
No, you're great.
So I appreciate all the positive energy, and I'm really hesitant to be Debbie Downer here.
Do it.
But
Do it. We'll turn it around.
If Maine's so awesome, how come our population is barely growing?
You're wrong. You're wrong. No, yeah, sorry.
And, Aubrey, as you mentioned, it's not for everybody. There are negatives. So how do we overcome that? Because we do have a lot of people, and I've done it myself. Maine's great, but you start answering what you think people are going to rave. Oh, the winters aren't so bad. And there's stuff going on. It's really not that boring.
Let's stop thinking the winters suck.
Let's talk about that.
But that's
suck.
a
Let's
part
be
of it,
honest.
right? Is that attitude, because so many of us go into it with the caveat, right? So instead of just talking about all the great things, we kind of come at it with this but we have to acknowledge up front how terrible some of the things are. The roads can be bad, and the snow is a lot, and the houses are old, and all of those things that we apologize for before they're even brought up. So first of all, we don't do a great job necessarily of selling the positive, and we focus sometimes too much on the negative.
Yes.
It happens, and it's just a human nature, and I think it's a little bit. I keep kind of thinking about things that I think are Maine way or sort of the New England ethos, and I think that is part of it. You want to be humble. You don't want to be seen as too too braggy, and so you kind of temper anything that's good with a little something bad. But that's one thing. We got to get out of our own way in a lot of instances and really just focus on the positive. And come at the other things. I think Nate said it this morning, don't look at them as challenges, look at them as opportunities, right? And I don't need to like steal your thunder on that. There's that. I think there's the fact that it's not for everyone. I think, you know, there's a lot of reasons why. We're also a rural state, and I grew up outside of Detroit in a fairly rural suburb on the very northern sort of tip of the Detroit, Michigan suburbs, in a town that's actually very much like Bangor in a lot of ways. And I grew up, my family, I was the 6th generation of my mom's family to be born there. My parents had never lived anywhere else their entire lives, and I could not wait to get out of there. Like, I was 18 and I, you know, barely graduate, like I turned 18 in March, I graduated high school in May, and I was gone and never looked back. Because I chafed at that sort of small world, and I wanted to live somewhere where I was anonymous. I didn't want to live under this microscope of like everybody knows everybody in my family and all our business. And here I am, 20-some years, I don't know how many years, I can't do that kind of math, but a lot of years later, I didn't go back to my hometown. Part of that is because my family doesn't live there anymore, finally. But I came to a place that every day reminds me very much of where I grew up, because as an adult, I appreciate that. And so, you know, the kids oftentimes chafe at that sort of small world, small town thing, and they need to go out and they need to explore and experience and find themselves and do their thing. But a lot of times they're going to want to come back. They're going to realize, especially when you get to that sort of age of settling down and having kids and like ready, wow, where do I want to raise my family? You know, for some people, they want to raise their family in New York City, and that's amazing and that's wonderful for them. For others, they want to know that their neighbors are looking out for them. That, you know, they're going to walk into the store and they're going to know the business owner and be able to have a chat with them. They're going to see people that they know in the grocery store, or see them out on the streets. That's an important thing.
And I'd echo that. But
I don't want to leave you guys out, but we need to get
Okay,
to
let's go
audience
to
questions.
that, yeah.
But really quickly, tell us about Boomerang Weekend.
Sure,
Yes.
and I want to throw a couple of numbers out there for context too, which is a perfect transition to Boomerang Weekend. So I'll just be data guy real quick. We're a state of 1.3 million people, I'm rounding here, but don't
give or take.
give or take 10,000 or so. So we're a state of 1.3 million people. We have 38 million people visit us every single year. And we need 75,000 people to join the workforce before 2030 to continue the economic growth we've seen in the last few decades.
At least.
That would be the minimum, right? So 75,000 out of, if we're taking just the tourism market, 75,000 out of 38 million is like nothing, right? It's nothing. So I think the fact that you phrased the question the way you did, and the fact that you're feeling that way, is a really exciting sign that we have the potential to turn the corner here. Because Maine was not messaging itself at all as a great place to be full time until a few years ago. I mean, the tourism office literally is financially incentivized, the way they're set up, to get people to come, leave, and come back again for a short period of time.
Yeah.
And so all our taxpayer dollars are going towards encouraging people to leave so they can come back again. And so until the last couple of years, part of that is state leadership change. Part of that is the fact that a lot of the organizations working on this are relatively new. We're both just a couple of years old, building momentum. And part of that is the culture shift that's happened in Maine. And it took, I mean, to be very blunt, the negative headlines nationwide for a lot of years in Maine, Maine only had negative headlines nationwide. And so all the good marketing work, and there's actually data to back this up, so this isn't a political statement, this is a marketing statement, that the harm that did to our brand, just from a tourism perspective, was incredible. And so we have to overcome that, we have to build it back up. But then that's just back to square zero, and we have to convince people that we're not just a good place to visit, we're a great place to live and work. So I think the fact that you're getting frustrated is great, because that means that everybody else is feeling frustrated too, and we'll eventually start doing it.
Can I add one super quick thing? And this is the thing, we've been talking about this brain drain and everyone leaving. And when that is our focus, that everyone's leaving, all the best and brightest are leaving, what that is, the statement of that, if we're worried about the best and the brightest leaving, the statement that we're saying is we don't think anyone else's best and brightest are going to come to Maine.
Right.
Let's get over that. Maine has plenty to offer that the best and brightest from anywhere else would want to be here and should want to be here. And we should really change that conversation. Yes, we ought to work to keep our best and brightest here and have them excited to be here. But there's nothing wrong with being open to the fact that other people's best and brightest want to come here.
So the
But
good
about
news
getting
is,
our best and brightest back.
Boomerang Weekend,
There you
perfect
go.
transition. So all of those best and brightest, and a bunch of other people too, are going to be visiting next week. So we have a bunch of glassware and swag that you must take home, because I'm not taking it with me. And the idea is very simple. We know about 1 million people, we don't know exact numbers, but roughly 1 million people visit the state next week. and most of them are coming to see friends and family. They have some sort of emotional connection here. You're probably all hosting about half of them. And we know exactly where they're going to be on Wednesday night, because Wednesday night is the biggest bar night in the country, and it's even bigger here in Maine. It's when Andy pays his mortgage for the entire year. And so we know exactly where they're going to be. His place, a lot of other places. It's the same reason here. It's the same reason many of us choose not to go out that night. So these are folks that are a lot of high school reunions statewide.
Say hi.
Exactly, that's part of the campaign. So our premise is pretty simple. We know where they're going to be. These are people that have never been asked to come back. So let's just ask them to come back, and let's tell them that they're wanted. Because the fact is there are more open jobs in Maine than there are qualified people to take them right now. So if you want to move back, you have to want it. If you have to want to move back, the opportunity's never been bigger, right? There are more jobs than there are people willing to take them. So ball's in your court, folks. So we've got a bunch of swag branded with Boomerang and Live Maine stuff. We're giving them out to venues all across the state. So Andy hasn't signed the piece of paper yet, but he will tonight, I'm sure, to participate. So he'll have a bunch of swag to give out next Wednesday night.
I don't know if I got it.
I signed you up anyway, so it's okay.
Cool.
So we're going to have about 100 venues
I got you.
statewide, from Kittery all the way up to Lubec and north of Lubec, that are going to be participating, i.e. just giving this stuff out and making sure that people know they're wanted. That's step one. And step two is the employers have to offer them a job. And we can't hire anyone, so all we can do is get them excited and push you to the employer's door. And from there, the jobs take care of themselves.
Great, thank you.
By the way, kudos to the best editorial title of the year today. Okay, Boomerang. That was
He's
you?
a very punny guy.
That was good.
I'm going to frame that for the office. Yeah, please. It's off.
I think you need it more than me.
All right, so who's got questions?
Very loud.
If you got one, just raise your hand and please introduce yourself. But I'm going to be running the mic around, so.
Please ask questions.
Who's
We would
first?
love to. We could talk all day, but thank you.
Sure. Sorry, got something.
No, sorry. It's all good.
But Jennifer's from Orrington too, Colorado.
From Orrington.
Yeah,
I grew up on Fowler Road.
and you mentioned Lubec, and I love Washington County. But so, people come to see you, and you tell them why they should be here. But how far-reaching is the effort to get people to be here? If I turn a TV on and I'm on vacation in Montana,
Yeah.
I mean, how far-reaching is the effort?
So, I don't need to use it unless you want me to, but yeah, great question. So we found right now our dollars are at a different order of magnitude than tourism. So tourism spends $18 million in taxpayer funds every year to promote the state as vacation land. We raise, we're at current, about hundreds of thousands of dollars to market the state. So we found the most effective use of that order of magnitude is to empower you all to do that outreach for us. Knowing that we have a lot of anecdotes and hard data that shows the people who relocate here most effectively and are retained here most effectively often come via personal referral or personal word of mouth. They have some sort of emotional or personal connection here in the state already. So we know the best form of attraction and the most effective retention are for people to work with you, not work with us. So our goal is to make sure that everybody knows they're wanted. So we're doing international outreach. We last year, 2 years ago, the biggest source of website traffic to our site was from Brazil. There's a funny story behind that too, but the point is, it's easy to sell Maine as a great place for people that want to be. The question is jobs, and the question is, I don't believe you because your job is to tell me that Maine is great. So show me the proof in the pudding. And so that's why our primary role is to build tools and assets that employers can leverage and that you all can leverage to help make the convincing job of trust me, move back. You know, we need to transition from that to don't take my word for it. You're wanted here, and here are some ways to get started. So we're tag teaming with tourism on their hotbed markets as well, but your reach is our reach.
Could you just explain what some of those tools are? And I know, Aubrae, you've talked about, don't duplicate what an HR department does, but enhance that, because there are things that HR departments can't do, like trailing spouses.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of the details about how those things work.
So the HR departments, the recruiters around the state, their reach is now nationwide as well. We're all experiencing the fact that there are not enough workers in Maine, and so their reach is extending as they leverage nationwide job searches and job boards. we are in a unique position. We are not sort of public facing in a way that Live and Work is. So we don't, people can't come to us and say, help us out, we want to move to Maine, give us tools, give us resources. What we do is we are hired or contracted by the employers. And so we do two things for them. We do the pre-hire consultation piece, and that's when they have, a group of 3 or 4 finalists for a position that are looking at relocating here. And we do the, kind of address those things that an HR department can't. So there are a lot of rules and sort of ethics things that bound a conversation and an interview process. But there are a lot of things that go beyond that someone needs to know about before they decide whether a community is for them. So if someone has a question about, religious preferences, or I get questions often about, I am this ethnicity, how am I going to be accepted in this community? We have a reputation of being very white and sort of very monoculture here. And we're changing, thank God. Bangor Brewer has just done some great things with their local municipal elections. It's been awesome. But I get a lot of questions from folks who are from different backgrounds to say, is this a place for me? Is my family going to be accepted? I'm gay or I'm lesbian. Am I going to be, okay in this community? So we can speak to all of those things. If we've got special needs kids, all the things you can't ask in an interview. And that's where we come in. We fit into the interview process, but we're confidential and we're outside of their hiring process. We have no bearing on whether they're hired. We're just there to answer their questions candidly and honestly. And so that's a tool that the employers in this area can use, and in the Portland area where we're working and as we grow across the state, can use to their advantage to make sure that the people that are accepting a job at the end are doing it with all of the knowledge that they can have to know that this is a good fit for them and for their family.
So specifics, number one, asking specifics, real quick, our website is the biggest one, resource website, liveworkmaine.com, general information about the state. We don't generate new content ourselves. We steal and borrow from other people, and we link out to other people's websites. So as soon as you get excited enough to want to learn more about X, learn more about Bangor, learn more about education, whatever, we provide you resources to experts who know that. We're not experts, we're generalists, right? So we get you excited and send you off. We have a job board. If you don't believe us that there are jobs, we got the jobs, folks. Browse away. And we've got the ability to match quality of life attributes with where employers are located. So you care about snowmobiling and you're not going to be happy unless you can go snowmobiling every day? Great. Here's where to start. Don't tell us what you're looking for in terms of a job, because we know you're not going to be happy with us snowmobiling, so start with that and go from there. So those are the key online resources, and then we build a lot of self-serve stuff to help make gobbledygook things that can actually be pretty powerful, accessible. Things that are like tax credits, for example, that reimburse your student debt payments.
Those are okay.
Those are okay.
Don't
Most
hate
powerful
those.
thing out there. So opportunitymaine.org. So we build things that are forward-facing instead of relying on a CPA to do the job for all of us. We're trying to build things so that people get excited by them and might want to move to Maine to take advantage of them.
How important do you think it is to attract employers? And if so, who's doing that? If Amazon headquarters number 2 had been placed in Maine, you'd have people coming from all over the country.
I'll dive into that. As somebody who's been an employer in the state of Maine for over 40 years now, I think there are opportunities right here. Our biggest concern is workforce, not employers right now. And that being said, we should always try to attract great employers. We should always try to attract great employers. We shouldn't be spending our dollars on mediocre or less than mediocre employers. And no offense to anybody who loves Amazon or Google or whatever, they're not doing what we do as local employers for a lot of reasons. They're not kicking back in communities. They're not supporting their staff like we do. We should be supporting local employers and encouraging people to come and build up our base so that local employers have more of a base. Now, that being said, if Amazon wanted to be here and they wanted to be here by our terms, freaking fantastic. Hell yeah. But we are not, my dad has been a very successful business person for 40 plus years. And he's done a very, very good job creating a multi-million-dollar company in Bangor that employs 75 people with a retention rate of 10 plus years for our average employee. It's everything you want. It's everything you want an employer in your town to be. My dad created that. And the thing I want to say is he did that with hard work and a directed focus on being a good human being and trying to make it work. And what we're seeing a lot as we're moving forward are people wanting to draw something shiny and crazy in. And what we need more than that is to, again, what some of the stuff I've said, get rid of that mentality of you're from away. We need more people. We are at a point where we need to have confidence that our economy is strong right now. Our economy in Maine is strong right now. And the biggest problem is if we continue to grow the way we've been growing, we don't have enough workers. It's not about attracting something that's going to hire people, because it's not that there are a lot of people waiting for jobs. It's that we need to draw more people here to the jobs that are already available. And with those, we'll draw more jobs. If people come to the jobs that are here and we increase our economy from where we are right now,
More jobs will be created.
more jobs will be created. And that Amazon or that Google or that whatever, Apple or whatever, whoever the big thing is, will want to be here. And we shouldn't bend over backwards for them because they're not going to bend over for us.
Yeah.
I guarantee that.
Very well said.
I'll only add, the organization doing employer recruiting in Maine is called Maine and Company. They've been around for quite a while. The state supports them a little bit, but they're majority funded by other employers in the state who recognize a rising tide lifts all boats. And so their job, there is a chicken and egg, obviously, right? We only exist because we have jobs that need to be filled, and we got to bring people here to do that and keep people here to do that. So we interface with them when they've got a company, and most of it is company employer expansion, by the way. It's not only, usually it's rare to find an employer that picks up its whole operation and relocates to Maine, but it's usually saying, hey, we need a satellite office, or hey, we need 30 people. This happens more frequently. We're trying to tell the story a little bit louder here. There are a lot of employers that seek, we need a team of 12 to 20 people, for example, to do X, and we don't care where they're located. And we've identified Maine as a great source of talent because everybody's really happy. And we want to employ people that have internet connection. Can you help connect us with those folks? And so the answer is yes, so as Maine and Company goes out and gets employers that are interested in expanding here, either to build a brick and mortar shop or to just hire folks in general, our job is to step into the conversation to show that employer that there is a system to get people excited to live and work here, and build their confidence that you don't hire 1,000 people. Well, first of all, you won't hire 1,000 people overnight. There aren't 1,000 people to hire. Wayfair is a good example, right? Wayfair started with 13 people in Brunswick, and they're at 750 last I checked. And so they've been growing incrementally as their confidence has been building that Maine is there to support them. We're there to make sure that their demographic is excited to be in that place, and Wayfair will offer them a job that they can get excited about along with it. So it's happening, and I think to Andy's point, the good news is that no employer is going to move here unless they get that, right? Wayfair did not come without knowing the environment they were coming into, and so I'm optimistic that process is working, but it is that sort of nobody's going to want to be here as an employer unless they recognize that everybody who's here is excited to have them, and so we got to sync up a little bit.
And there's another side of that coin too, and this is where I get to sort of put on my other hat and plug something else, but remote work is becoming a reality across the country. And through it, there's places, co-working is becoming a thing in Maine. It's been a thing in Portland for a while. There's 8 or 9 last time I counted co-working spaces in Portland proper. We have a co-working space here in Bangor that I'm a partner in, and so that's where I get to plug co-work. It's awesome, check it out. But it creates a reality for people who want to live here for the lifestyle, for the place, to be able to pick up that career and bring it with them. And it also creates that sort of employee base for companies to say, oh, I don't have to have an entire office and a brick and mortar in Bangor, but I can have 3 employees I can pay, a nominal fee to get them a small office where they can work together and interface and have access to all of the amenities of an office. The state just kind of rolled out their co-working development fund as they recognize this becoming a way to grow some of the workforce and address some of the challenges in rural populations. So we're in the middle of a grant cycle with the state where they're giving money to co-working spaces around Maine to try and help them grow and develop and attract new employees and attract new Mainers and show them that there's a way for them to work here, without maybe having the job opportunity or having the industry right here with them. And so that's attractive to potential employers as well.
Who's next?
All right, we got more. I love it. I have a feeling this is not going to stop at 7.
No, I won't take a long time.
We will.
So,
We will.
I work for Eastern Maine Development Corporation, and we work with a number of people who sit on the sidelines. So we are tapped in to a market that can't get a job. So I think that it's really important for us to keep that in the conversation. There are people here who want to live here, who want to work here, who have a really difficult time getting a job here. And so I think it's really important that we kind of keep that framework in the back of our minds here and talk about what kinds of things are holding employers back from taking these people off the sidelines. The Career Center as a whole sees a number of people daily who are also struggling in this way, and often it ties back into a criminal history. And often that ties back to substance abuse or some sort of misdemeanor record that resulted in several strikes and gives them a felony. So you have a lot of employers whose hands end up tied through insurance policies and hiring policies because it's going to cost them a lot of money for them to take that risk. We try to bridge that gap in a lot of ways, but we can't do that with every business and every single person because our money is tied to other data markers and federal grant restrictions and all of that. But I think it's really important that we as a whole are working to educate employers in the area so that they understand how those policies may be holding them back from a market that's ready to go. They are ready to work, they do have good skills, and they can be really, really great employees if given that opportunity.
Anecdotally, we employ, I'm not going to share how many nor what for, but we employ some people who have felony convictions. And we actually had somebody who applied for a job for us that said, I am disappointed in you folks for hiring this person who has a felony conviction, and I will not continue my employment opportunity with you. And we said, cool story, bye. We feel like everybody gets another chance. We are not crystal clean, perfect people ourselves. We want to do the best by people. I agree with that on that level. The flip side of that is what I'm seeing when we have a job opening is we're getting what used to be a job that we would post that would get 30 or 40 applicants is getting 5 maybe. And of those 5, we are seeing typically doubling up on no-shows to applications. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I agree. And I think some of the bigger overarching corporate entities that are coming here to employ people maybe are too rigid. From my experience in my company, what I can say is that is becoming less and less of an issue because we are so low on our unemployment rate right now that the people who want to come and apply who are capable of showing up and doing the job, that's all. Like, I care about keeping my staff and my customers safe. If there's a question of safety, I would not hire somebody. If it's not a question of safety, and that person is qualified to do the job, I care about your history because I care about your history. And if there's something I need to know, I want to know, and I want to make sure that we're directing you into positive avenues for your future as well. But less and less are we seeing scenarios where that is becoming an issue. And so I hear you, and I think, again, that's why we need to encourage local small business that cares about the community and rehabilitating people who have made a mistake.
Yeah, so tagging on to that, I certainly have some folks I can send your way.
Yeah.
And I think the more that people in the area hear from you about your personal experience with folks who you brought on with the risk and have become more successful, the easier all of our jobs become. So we have had that happen also with other employers where we actually convinced them to take the risk through some of the programs that we operate, and they turned out wonderful. And so we use that as success stories.
Send them away.
But we
I'm not
need
worried about the
more.
risk.
We need more employers to tell that success story in these kinds of venues and on a broader scale, so that more people hear that face-to-face connection. For sure.
And this
I'll
is
tell you
where
right
you
now.
take a page though out of the Live and Work playbook, because that's their model, right? Is storytelling and amplifying their stories. And so, use some of the tools that they offer and getting the word out there, and target it at small businesses and local businesses that are employing, sort of at-risk populations or populations that have a checkered past or whatever it is, and use that, kind of that model to amplify this story and, build that community.
I'm going to say I'm not saying this to imply that state government is going to solve all our problems, but the good news is that the state economic planning process has resolved, and the governor is going to present this plan that a lot of third-party organizations that don't have any affiliation with the state, us included, had a direct hand in crafting. And so that 75,000 number that I mentioned is adding people to the workforce. That's not necessarily people that are coming new to Maine, right? That's people that are going back to work. There is a chunk of that includes folks that are currently on the sidelines that we're anticipating, and the state is anticipating, and I'm assuming will invest in accelerating, improving that pathway so that there is not just this sort of haphazard, it's great that you two connected, and if people get hired, right? That's a wonderful connection, but that's not scalable. And so there needs to be a more scalable path for that the state recognizes. And so at the very least, they won't be a barrier to that in the future, TBD if they help. And that same mentality is applied to the other demographics. So you take that folks on the sidelines. I mean, I would lump, the hundreds of people that are seeking asylum and currently living in Maine into that category. WEX has identified 17 of the, I just learned this the other day, 17 of the 150-something people that arrived in the most recent group. 17 of them are overqualified for jobs, and there's an offer waiting. WEX is legally prohibited from hiring them for no practical reason, right? The state has control over that time frame in this case. And so the good news is that instances like that are getting some light shown on them. And so I'm optimistic that things will get better, but I appreciate your work, and I echo your statement that the louder you speak, the louder Andy speaks, the louder we all speak. We can't ignore something. That the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right?
Yeah, thankfully I'm not
Unfortunately.
I'll just
Take the microphone home.
thank you, Leah. I work with Leah at Eastern Maine Development Corporation, and I have 2 felonies. And in fact, during my drinking days, which ended 2 years ago, last month, I was banned from Geaghan's. I just want to, seriously, I'm not kidding. Geaghan's, Seasons, the casino, and Ross Manor. So that's an interesting story. True, all true. But I now work with people who are in recovery from substance use issues, and people with criminal records and re-entering from jails and prisons. I won't bring up the jail issues, Susan and Matt, so don't run from the room screaming. But anyway, yes, I'm supposed to work tomorrow or Friday with a young woman who has a record from 2007, who has felt that she can only get jobs in the fast food industry ever since. So I just want to echo what Leah said, that it's terrific that we want to get new people to come to Maine. I do too. I work on my friends in DC who I used to work with years ago. Come to Maine, and not just for a visit. But we have a big group of people who really are waiting for the door to open a little bit more to them, and so we do, as a society, need to keep working on stigma. There are studies that show that people who are in recovery, for example, have less absenteeism, they take fewer sick days. There's all kinds of research. So I appreciate all that you're doing. Bring more people to Maine, but there is a segment of the population out there who we need to open the door to because they've either served their time or in recovery, and they deserve a chance too. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, 100%. And I feel the interesting position of being somebody who creates, and I'm sure Nate does as well, somebody who creates an intoxicant for a living in our sort of commercial world.
We also make seltzer.
Yeah, yeah, good for you. And it's a difficult scenario, you know, and I appreciate where all that lives. But the reality is, we have tons of people in our. Well, maybe if you wait, I don't know how much. But we have many people in our ranks that are in recovery for many different things, and they can be, and oftentimes are, some of our best employees. And you know, I think you're right. We do need to get rid of some of the stigmas. And I don't know exactly how we get rid of some of the. I think we need to spend more time looking at how do we get rid of some of the incentives. And it's weird to say it in that way, but really everybody makes decisions based on incentives. And there are certain incentives that lead towards negative action as well as positive action. And we need to really incentivize the positive action and the opportunities for that growth. And right now we aren't as well as we could, and I'd like to see that change. I'd like to see us grow towards incentivizing that positive action towards growth and towards and personally and corporately. So that people are given that opportunity and develop and grow. And I agree with you 100%. I think recovery is critically important and positive, and I think it's where we're going to find some of our best people in the next couple of years if we're not finding them from coming away.
So the good news for all of us is that the math does not add up unless we say yes to everything. There is not one demographic or pool of people from not currently in Maine to college students that are leaving. If you dial one of them up to 100%, none of them solve the problem. So there is no silver bullet. The answer is yes, the answer is yes, the answer is yes, the answer is yes. That's as much a challenge as it is an opportunity.
And the good news from the employer perspective, I was in a discussion down in Portland a month or so ago that USM convened of corporate partners. So it was, larger employers from around the state. And this very issue came up of the fact that, we can't afford, as large employers, we can't afford to sort of knock off entire groups of people without actually taking a look holistically at the candidate. And so this was a room full of people who are saying we can't find people, and it's like, well, a lot of your sort of baseline criteria are deselecting for a group of very qualified individuals. And so if you, instead of just automatically having your sort of algorithm weed out 25, 30, 40% of all the people that apply, start changing it and start making it a more open and holistic approach and looking at the whole candidate as opposed to just do they tick these 3 boxes before we even consider them to move on. And so it's not going to happen quickly, change doesn't, but this is a conversation that's being had at a variety of levels, and it's a conversation that I think will continue to happen, and there is change on the horizon, and it's up to all of us to make it happen sooner than later.
Who else has a question?
Great question.
I think we got about 10 minutes left.
We might have.
You give me one too. Yeah.
So my name's Brian Dorr. I'm at Eastern Maine Community College. I've had a kind of a long personal history in higher ed, but I'm pretty new to the community college. Kind of picking up on a lot of the things that have just been said. One challenge that we're facing is that we have our students shopped out of their programs before they finish because the employment rate is so high, the unemployment rate is so low, that our building construction folks, our welding folks, other folks don't actually finish. They're hired before they're done, okay? And in one sense, that's great. I mean, what we want is we want people to achieve what it is that they're looking to do. The consequence for the individual is that it hurts their long-term kinds of opportunities, or it could. One of the things that we're really looking at is, do we need to back away from, and I think we've answered the question with yes, back away from what are traditional degrees, okay? So AS degrees, BA degrees, BS degrees, and so forth. And really move to, we're moving in the direction of credentialing, we're moving in the direction of badging, we're moving in the direction of certificates. And I'm interested in hearing some of the panel's thoughts of, not just that we know that this is the direction and we're moving in that direction. We can't possibly take in as many nurses, for example, as we can then graduate in place instantly. Okay, they all have jobs and they're all doing very well. What we recognize is that there's also this need. You folks are saying, some of these folks, they don't necessarily have the credentials, they don't necessarily have the pieces in place that we need them to have. How do we partner with all of the folks that are out there to fill that gap? Because we know that 60% of Maine's graduating seniors will not go on for higher education. So even though there's a population cliff right now in terms of the number of graduating seniors, so if you look at, say, 2003, there were right around 17,500 in the graduating cohort. In another 5 years, that graduating cohort is projected to drop below 13,500. That's a huge decline. On the other hand, we know that the majority of students in the state of Maine are not going on for higher ed. 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees clearly are not the answer. How do we partner with businesses? How do we partner with other organizations? How do we help become part of the milieu of solutions for folks to fill in the gap of the skills gap, to develop that workforce and to give people that pathway of a lifelong attainment that lets them not just enter the workforce, help to fill those positions, but also to move up and move forward in their careers in ways that keep them in Maine, keep them here, keep them on a trajectory of progress and improvement. And so for us, I think that's the biggest thing that has been a real struggle. And I'm interested in hearing kind of comments from the panel.
Can I ask you a quick question before we turn it up? How do employers today, how do they interface with you to hire students? Meaning, how do they know the students are ready to go before they're ready to go?
So we're fighting against folks that are recruiting, like, say, our welding students directly out of their first course. So they've got basics.
Are they working with employers in that course?
They're not. The employers, I believe, are shopping them directly out
waiting for them in the parking lot.
Yeah, pretty much.
There are, honestly, there's that much need. There's that much need.
So if you can strike an arc and you can get the work done, but that's not the same as having somebody who is trained to be a master welder, right? And for that individual, the consequences of not getting the rest of that picture in place, yes, they have the short-term gain of instant wages, right? Yeah. But the opportunity cost is huge for that person.
I agree with you, but here's the conundrum for me. What I see as somebody who is highly educated in the state of Maine, making my own way right now in the way that our economy works was far better for me. Far better for me. I'm one of the top tier students that has come out of Maine in the early 2000s, and I looked at it and said I could do these things and I could be employed by somebody else, but being an entrepreneur right now in Maine is stronger, and they would say the same thing. I mean, he's got a great gig with Live Work Maine, but he also is an entrepreneur and making his own path. Being an employee right now in the state of Maine being a high tier employee in the state of Maine is not necessarily better than being an entry level employee who finds their own path and becomes an entrepreneur. And that's where I don't know how to answer your question. And I'll just throw that out there as a kind of a hard stop. Somebody who gets hired as a welder after a class, who has the ambition to go and do that and then push their own story. One of the beautiful things about the state of Maine right now is we have the opportunity still to create our own story. To be somebody who has a degree in ecology and environmental science and a master's degree in theology, becoming owner of a brewery and a pub right here. I don't have a business degree, but I have been honored by the Bangor Region Chamber of Commerce as Entrepreneur of the Year.
But you also have to recognize your privilege of
100%.
a third generation family
sure,
business, and
sure.
a lot of these kids who
But
are.
the reality is also those kids looking at it from the perspective of everyone saying, there's no opportunity in Maine, there's no opportunity in Maine, there's no opportunity in Maine, there's no opportunity in Maine. They get one course and somebody gives them an opportunity. Why the hell are they not going to take it? Why would they not take it? The narrative is there's no opportunity here. The big problem in Maine is the narrative is there's no opportunity here. We need to stop that narrative, okay? Because if you're a first-year welding student who's been told by your high school geometry teacher that you're an idiot and there's no opportunity for you, which happens. I was an educator, I saw that. And then you end up as a trade school student who is a lesser than their counterpart who went on to a 4-year degree in their minds. I don't believe that. I know my tradespeople that I pay lots of dollars to are not lesser than. But the mentality is you go to a 4-year degree if you're successful. You go to a trade school if you can't figure out how to go to a 4-year degree. We have to change the whole narrative. It's not, the question you're asking, I understand where you're asking from, and I applaud what you're asking, and I think we need to answer that question, but the question is not something you can control, it's something we need to control before you're engaging with these students. And it's the mentality of we need to support people who have a desire to do any number of things in the state, who have a talent to do any number of things in the state, and say, you know what, I applaud you and I support you and you are very valuable. Can I share an anecdotal story? I'm going to, no one said no. I had a student, so when I was teaching, I taught high school science for a number of years. And when I was teaching high school science, I taught freshmen, and I taught at-risk freshmen. And Brewer High School quietly created this program where the social studies, math, English, and science teacher of students who were at risk but were not 504. And 504, if anybody doesn't know, is like where they are first level triggered into support but not special ed. So it's that like 504 is the base level of like a student can have a 504 plan who is not special ed but has been cited as needing some extra help. This was a group that was just sub 504 but was cited as having a lot of sort of social triggers that would lead to a potential for lesser performance. And what we did was we had the science, social studies, English, and math teacher all grouped together quietly, nobody knew, and we talked about these students behind their backs, but for their benefit, and looked at what can we do as educators to help these students without a 504 plan, not special accommodations, not things that are mandated, not things that take away from the rest of our class. How can we help these students? And one of the things we cited was just knowing what a student is struggling with. So we met every week. And this student was struggling in a couple of classes. And the thing that I knew that a lot of other educators weren't willing to listen to was this kid was making $60,000 a year. This kid was 15 years old, making $60,000 a year
Going on.
as the stern man on his dad.